Welcome back to CoinAgeEra, the place where ordinary coins turn into hidden treasures, and history comes alive in your hands. Have you ever looked at a simple quarter and thought, could this actually be worth more than just 25 cents? Most people don't realize this, but some of the most valuable coins in America are still hiding in everyday circulation. The coins you carry in your pocket, the ones sitting in your drawer, or even the change you get back at a store, could secretly be worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. And today's video is going to prove exactly that. We're diving deep into a powerful lineup of Washington quarters from 1971 all the way to 1990. At first glance, these coins may look completely normal, but behind their simple design lies a world of rare errors, hidden varieties, minting secrets, and incredible high-grade values that collectors are constantly searching for. This was a time when the United States had already moved away from silver coins, entering a new era of clad coinage. But even without silver, these quarters hold something just as valuable: rarity, history, and collector demand. In this video, you'll discover hidden errors that most people completely miss, rare high-grade coins worth serious money, the real value of each year, from common to extremely rare, and the exact details you need to look for before spending your coins. Some of these quarters have sold for hundreds, others for thousands. And the craziest part is they still look like ordinary coins. So before you spend another quarter, make sure you watch this video till the end, because the next coin you find might not just be spare change. It might be a hidden treasure. Now let's start with our very first coin, the 1971 Washington quarter. Let's take a closer look at the 1971 Washington quarter. The 1971 Washington quarter represents a powerful moment in U.S. coin history, a time when the country was adjusting to a completely new monetary reality. Just a few years earlier, in 1965, the United States removed silver from its circulating coins due to rising silver prices and heavy hoarding by the public. By 1971, this transition was no longer new. It had become the standard. This means the 1971 quarter was part of the early generation of copper-nickel-clad coins, replacing the traditional 90% silver composition that had defined American coinage for decades. While many collectors initially overlooked these coins because they lacked silver, time has proven that rarity and condition matter far more than metal content. The design of the coin remained classic and unchanged. On the front, you'll see George Washington's iconic portrait, originally designed by John Flanagan in 1932. This design was created to honor the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth and has since become one of the most recognizable images in American history. On the reverse side, the eagle stands strong with wings spread wide, holding arrows and olive branches, symbolizing both military strength and the desire for peace. During the early 1970s, with the Vietnam War ongoing and political tensions rising, this imagery carried deep national significance. Now let's talk about production. The 1971 quarter was minted in 3 locations: Philadelphia, which produced over 109 million coins, Denver, with more than 258 million coins, and San Francisco, which created special proof versions for collectors. At first glance, these numbers make the coin seem extremely common and in circulated condition. It is. Millions of these coins were used daily in transactions, passed from hand to hand, slowly losing their original detail and shine. But here's where things change completely. Finding a 1971 quarter in truly high-grade condition today is incredibly difficult. Most coins from that era have been worn down over decades. Coins that remain in near-perfect condition with sharp details, no scratches, and original mint luster are extremely rare. In the coin grading world, condition is everything. A typical worn 1971 quarter is still worth just face value to 25 cents. But an uncirculated example in MS65 condition can be worth $20 to $50. And when you reach MS67 or higher, the value can jump to $1,000 or even more at auction. That's a massive difference, all based on condition alone. But the real excitement begins with mint errors. Some 1971 quarters feature double die errors, where the lettering, especially Liberty or In God We Trust, appears slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. These errors can significantly increase a coin's value. There are also die cracks, where stress in the minting dies creates raised lines across the coin. While small cracks are common, dramatic ones can turn a normal coin into a unique collectible. Off-center strikes are another possibility, where the design is not properly aligned. If the date is still visible and the misalignment is significant, these coins can sell for hundreds of dollars. And then comes one of the rarest and most exciting discoveries: wrong planchette errors. This happens when a quarter is accidentally struck on a blank meant for a different coin, resulting in unusual size, weight, or color. These rare mistakes are highly sought after and can sell for thousands of dollars, depending on their uniqueness and condition. So while the 1971 Washington quarter may seem like just another ordinary coin, it actually holds a combination of history, rarity, and hidden potential, from everyday pocket change to a possible four-figure collectible. All it takes is one sharp eye to spot the difference. Now let's move on to the next coin. And this one takes things to a whole new level because the 1972 Washington quarter is not just another year. It's a coin full of subtle details, collector interest, and hidden potential that many people still ignore today. Let's take a deep dive into the 1972 Washington quarter. The 1972 quarter was minted during a time when the United States was fully adapting to its new coinage system. By this point, silver coins were already out of circulation, and the copper-nickel composition had become the new normal. But even though these coins didn't contain silver, they still carried something incredibly valuable: rarity and condition, and minting variations. Just like the 1971 quarter, the 1972 version features the iconic portrait of George Washington on the front, designed by John Flanagan. The design had already stood the test of time for 40 years, representing consistency and national identity. On the reverse, the powerful eagle design continues, wings spread wide, holding arrows and olive branches, symbolizing strength and peace. This classic design remained in use until 1998, making these quarters part of a long-running historical series. Now let's talk about mintage. The 1972 quarter was produced in huge numbers. Philadelphia minted over 153 million coins. Denver produced more than 346 million coins, and San Francisco struck proof versions for collectors. At first glance, this makes the coin seem very common, and in circulated condition, it absolutely is. But here's the key. Most of these coins were heavily used in daily life. Over time, they became scratched, worn, and lost their original mint luster. That's why finding a 1972 quarter today in high-grade condition is much harder than people think. And in coin collecting, condition can change everything. A normal circulated 1972 quarter is still worth just face value. But an uncirculated coin in MS-65 condition can be worth $15 to $40, and in MS-67 or higher, which is extremely rare, the value can jump to $800 or even over $1,500 depending on demand. Yes, again, a simple quarter turning into serious money. Now let's uncover the real hidden treasures. One of the most important things to look for in a 1972 quarter is doubling. Some coins show double die errors, especially in the words Liberty and In God We Trust. These are caused by misalignment during the die creation process and can significantly increase value, even if the doubling is slight. There are also die cracks and die breaks, where the coin shows raised lines or unusual metal flow due to damaged dies. Larger and more dramatic examples are especially collectible. Off-center strikes are another exciting error, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin. The more off-center it is, while keeping the date visible, the higher the value. Clipped planchette errors can also be found, where a portion of the coin appears to be missing due to a cutting mistake during production. These unique shapes make the coins stand out immediately. And then comes the rare category: wrong planchette errors. If a 1972 quarter was accidentally struck on a different type of metal blank, it can look thinner, lighter, or even have a completely different color. These rare mint mistakes are highly valuable and can sell for thousands of dollars in the right condition. Now let's talk about proof coins from San Francisco. These coins were specially made for collectors with mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. Some of them feature deep cameo contrast, where the design appears frosted against a reflective background. High-quality proof coins can sell for $50 to several $100s, depending on grade. So while millions of 1972 quarters were made, only a tiny fraction remain in top condition or carry valuable errors. And that's what makes this coin so interesting. It's common, but at the same time, it holds the potential to be rare. So the next time you come across a 1972 Washington quarter, don't ignore it. Take a closer look, because what seems like ordinary pocket change could actually be a hidden collectible worth far more than you expect. Now let's move on to the next coin. And this one is where collectors start paying even closer attention, because the 1974 Washington quarter may look just like any other coin, but hidden within it are some surprising details, rare conditions, and valuable errors that can turn this ordinary piece into something truly special. Let's take a deep dive into the 1974 Washington quarter. The 1974 quarter was minted during a challenging economic period in the United States. Inflation was rising and the country was going through financial uncertainty. Despite this, the U.S. Mint continued producing coins in massive quantities to keep up with demand. Like the previous years, the 1974 quarter was made using a copper-nickel clad composition with no silver content. But again, what it lacks in silver, it makes up for in collectability and rarity in high grades. The design remains the same classic look. George Washington's portrait on the front, designed by John Flanagan, and the strong eagle design on the reverse, symbolizing power and peace. Now let's talk about mintage numbers. Philadelphia minted over 801 million coins. Denver produced more than 353 million coins. And San Francisco struck proof versions for collectors. These are huge numbers, which is why most people think this coin has no value beyond 25 cents. But here's where the reality changes. Because of such high production, quality control wasn't always perfect. Many coins were struck with weak details, poor luster, or small imperfections. That's why finding a 1974 quarter in truly high-grade condition today is extremely difficult. Most coins you'll find are worn, scratched, or dull. But if you come across one in MS65 condition, it can be worth around $15 to $35. In MS67, the value jumps significantly, often reaching $500 to $1,000. And in MS67 plus or higher, which is extremely rare, it can go well beyond that at auctions. Now let's talk about what makes this coin really exciting. Mint errors. The 1974 quarter is known among collectors for having some interesting error varieties. One of the most noticeable is double die errors, where parts of the lettering, especially Liberty or the date, appear slightly doubled. Even small doubling can increase value. There are also die cracks and die breaks, which create raised lines or unusual patterns on the coin. Some of these cracks can become very dramatic, making the coin unique. Off-center strikes are another collectible error, where the coin design is not properly aligned. The more off-center the strike, while still showing the date, the higher the value. Clipped planchette errors can also be found, where a piece of the coin appears missing due to a cutting issue during production. But one of the most exciting possibilities: wrong planchette errors. Imagine finding a 1974 quarter that was struck on a blank meant for another coin, giving it a different weight, thickness, or even color. These rare mistakes can be worth thousands of dollars depending on their condition and uniqueness. Now let's not forget the San Francisco proof coins. These coins were specially made for collectors with mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. Some feature deep cameo contrast, making them highly desirable. High-grade proof coins can range from $20 to several $100s. So even though the 1974 Washington quarter was produced in massive numbers, only a small percentage hold real collector value. It all comes down to condition and errors. So the next time you see a 1974 quarter, don't just ignore it. Look closely. Because behind that ordinary appearance could be a coin worth far more than you ever expected. Now let's move on to the next coin. And this one might look simple at first glance, but don't underestimate it, because the 1977 Washington quarter is one of those coins where condition and rare errors can make a massive difference in value. Let's take a deep dive into the 1977 Washington quarter. By 1977, the United States was fully settled into the clad coinage era. Silver coins were now a thing of the past, and copper-nickel quarters had become completely normal in everyday transactions. Millions of these coins were circulating across the country, used daily without a second thought. The design, once again, remained unchanged and iconic. On the obverse, we have George Washington's portrait, a timeless symbol of American leadership, originally designed by John Flanagan. On the reverse, the eagle stands proudly with wings spread, holding arrows and olive branches, representing strength and peace. Now let's talk about mintage. The 1977 quarter was produced in large numbers. Philadelphia minted over 468 million coins. Denver produced more than 256 million coins. And San Francisco issued proof coins for collectors. At first glance, this makes the coin seem very common, and yes, in circulated condition it is still worth just 25 cents. But here's where things change. Because these coins were heavily used in everyday life, most of them today are worn out, scratched, and lacking detail. Finding a 1977 quarter in high grade, uncirculated condition is actually much harder than people think. And that's where the real value begins. An MS63, MS65 example can be worth around $10 to $30. But in MS67 condition, the value can jump to $400 to $900. And in extremely rare MS67 Plus or higher grades, prices can cross $1,500 at auctions. Yes, once again, a simple quarter turning into serious money. Now let's talk about the hidden gems. Mint errors. The 1977 quarter is known for several types of collectible errors. Some coins show double die features, especially in the lettering, like Liberty and Ingadwi, Trust. While the doubling is often subtle, it can still add significant value. There are also die cracks and die breaks, which create raised lines or unusual textures on the coin. Larger, more visible cracks are especially desirable among collectors. Off-center strikes are another exciting find, where the coin's design is misaligned. If the date is still visible and the off-center strike is significant, these coins can be worth hundreds of dollars. Clipped planchet errors can also appear where part of the coin is missing due to a minting mistake. These unique shapes make the coin stand out instantly. And just like previous years, the rarest category, wrong planchet errors. If a 1977 quarter was struck on a different metal blank, it can look completely unusual, different size, weight, or color. These rare coins can sell for thousands depending on their condition. Now let's talk about proof coins from San Francisco. These coins were made specifically for collectors, featuring mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. Some high-grade deep cameo proofs can be worth $50 to several $100s. So even though the 1977 Washington quarter seems like a common coin, the truth is high-quality examples and error coins are far from common. And that's what makes it exciting, because the difference between an ordinary coin and a valuable one is just a matter of detail. So next time you find a 1977 quarter, take a closer look, because hidden in plain sight could be a coin worth far more than you ever imagined. Now let's move on to the next coin. And this is where things start getting even more interesting for collectors, because the 1979 Washington quarter may seem extremely common, but when it comes to high-grade condition and rare errors, This coin has some serious hidden potential. Let's take a deep dive into the 1979 Washington quarter. By 1979, the clad coinage system was fully established, and quarters were being produced in massive quantities to support everyday transactions across the United States. These coins were everywhere, in stores, banks, vending machines, constantly circulating without much attention. The design remained the same classic and powerful look. On the obverse, George Washington's portrait continues to represent strength and leadership. On the reverse, the eagle stands tall with wings spread wide, holding arrows and olive branches, a lasting symbol of America's balance between power and peace. Now let's talk about the numbers. The 1979 quarter had extremely high mintage figures. Philadelphia minted over 515 million coins, Denver produced more than 489 million coins, and San Francisco struck proof coins for collectors. With such huge numbers, it's easy to assume this coin has no value beyond face value. And in most cases, that's true. A worn, circulated 1979 quarter is still worth just 25 cents. But here's where things take a turn, because finding this coin in truly high-grade condition is much harder than people expect. Most of these coins were used heavily for decades, which means very few remain in near-perfect, uncirculated condition today. And in coin collecting, perfection is where the money is. An MS63, MS65 example can be worth around $10 to $25. In MS67 condition, the value can rise to $300 to $700. And in extremely rare MS67 plus or higher grades, prices can exceed $1,000 at auctions. Now let's uncover the real hidden treasures. The 1979 quarter is known for several collectible mint errors. Some coins show double die errors, especially in the lettering and date. Even slight doubling can increase the value significantly. There are also die cracks and die breaks, creating raised lines or unusual patterns on the surface. Larger and more dramatic cracks make the coin more desirable. Off-center strikes are another exciting find, where the coin's design is not properly aligned. If the date is still visible and the misalignment is strong, these coins can be worth hundreds of dollars. Clipped planchette errors can also be found, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting issue during production. And just like the previous coins, wrong planchette errors, these occur when a quarter is accidentally struck on a blank, meant for another denomination. The result is a coin with a completely different appearance and potentially a value of thousands of dollars depending on rarity and condition. Now let's not forget the San Francisco proof coins. These were specially made for collectors with mirror-like finishes and sharp details. Some feature deep cameo contrast, making them highly collectible. High-grade proofs can range from $30 to several $100s. So while the 1979 Washington quarter may seem like one of the most common coins out there, the truth is, rare conditions and errors can turn it into something much more valuable. It all depends on what you're able to spot. So the next time you see a 1979 quarter, don't just spend it. Take a closer look. Because sometimes the most common coins hide the most unexpected value. Now let's move on to the next coin. And this time, instead of just looking at numbers and errors, let's understand the story behind it. Because the 1980 Washington quarter comes from a very unique time in American history. Let's take a closer and more interesting look at the 1980 Washington quarter. The year 1980 was a time of major change and uncertainty in the United States. Inflation was high, unemployment was rising, and people were feeling the pressure of an unstable economy. Money was moving fast, and coins like the quarter were being used more than ever in daily life. And right in the middle of all this, the 1980 quarter was quietly doing its job. Millions of these coins were flowing through gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines, and public transport. People weren't collecting them. They were spending them without a second thought. But that's exactly what makes this coin interesting today. Because while everyone was busy using them, very few people were saving them in perfect condition. The design remained the same, George Washington on the front, Strong and steady as always, almost like a symbol of stability during uncertain times. On the back, the eagle still spreads its wings, representing power, resilience, and survival. Now here's something to think about. The 1980 quarter wasn't rare when it was made. In fact, it was produced in huge numbers. Philadelphia minted over 518 million coins. Denver produced more than 549 million coins. And San Francisco created proof versions for collectors. So yes, it was everywhere. But here's the twist. Because these coins were used so heavily during a tough economic period, most of them today are worn out, damaged, and far from perfect. That means finding a 1980 quarter today in high-grade, untouched condition is actually much harder than people expect. And that's where the value begins. A circulated 1980 quarter? Still just 25 cents. But in MS65 condition, around $15 to $30. In MS67, the value can jump to $400 to $900. And in extremely rare, MS67 or higher, it can cross $1,500 or more. Now let's talk about the hidden side of this coin. Even in such a high production year, mint errors still happened. Some 1980 quarters show double die features, small but noticeable doubling in the text. These are often overlooked but valuable. There are also die cracks and die breaks, where the coin develops unusual raised lines due to stress in the minting process. Off-center strikes are another exciting find, coins that look misprinted, with part of the design missing or shifted. The more dramatic the error, the higher the value. Clipped planchette errors can also appear, giving the coin a unique, incomplete shape. And just like the previous years, the rarest finds are wrong planchette errors. If a 1980 quarter was struck on a different type of metal blank, it can look completely unusual, and these coins can be worth thousands depending on their rarity. Now let's not forget the San Francisco proof coins. These were made with extra care for collectors. Some feature deep cameo contrast, a beautiful frosted design against a mirror-like background. High-grade proofs can sell for $40 to several $100s. So what makes the 1980 Washington quarter special isn't just its value, it's the story behind it. A coin that lived through a tough economic time, used by millions, ignored by most. But today, quietly holding value for those who know where to look. So next time you find a 1980 quarter, don't underestimate it, because sometimes history hides in the most ordinary places. Now let's move on to the next coin. And this one is completely different from all the previous ones, because the 1983 Washington quarter is not just another coin, it's actually considered one of the most important modern quarters in U.S. history. Let's take a deep dive into the 1983 Washington quarter. The story of this coin begins with a surprising decision by the U.S. Mint. In 1982 and 1983, the Mint made a major change. They stopped producing official mint sets for collectors. Normally, these sets preserve coins in perfect, uncirculated condition. But during these 2 years, that didn't happen. And this created a huge impact. Because almost all 1983 quarters went straight into circulation. They were used in daily transactions, passed from hand to hand, scratched, worn down, and damaged over time. Very few were saved in pristine condition, simply because collectors didn't have easy access to fresh, uncirculated coins. And that's exactly what makes the 1983 quarter so special today. The design remained the same classic, Washington look, but behind that familiar appearance lies one of the biggest supply problems in modern coin collecting. Now let's talk about mintage. Philadelphia minted around 673 million coins. Denver produced about 617 million coins. These are huge numbers, which might make the coins seem common. But here's the twist. Those numbers don't reflect how many high-quality coins actually survived. Because most of them were heavily circulated, finding a 1983 quarter today in true uncirculated condition is extremely difficult. And that's why collectors pay serious money for it. A circulated 1983 quarter? Still just 25 cents. But in MS63, MS65 condition, it can be worth $20 to $80. In MS-67, values can jump to $1,000 to $2,000. And in MS-67 Plus or higher, these coins have sold for $3,000 or more at auction. Yes, this is one of those rare cases where a modern coin becomes extremely valuable. Now let's talk about errors. Even though most coins were circulated, some still carry valuable mint mistakes. Double die errors can be found, especially in the lettering and date. These are subtle but valuable. Die cracks and die breaks are also seen, creating raised lines or unusual textures on the coin. Off-center strikes are highly collectible, especially when the date is still visible. Clipped planchette errors can also appear, giving the coin a unique and noticeable shape. And just like before, the rarest category, wrong planchette errors. A 1983 quarter struck on a different metal blank can be worth thousands of dollars, depending on condition and rarity. But here's the real key takeaway. The 1983 Washington quarter is not valuable because it's rare in number. It's valuable because it's rare in condition. That's what makes it different from all the previous coins. So the next time you find a 1983 quarter, don't ignore it. Check its condition carefully. Now let's move on to the next coin. And while this one may seem similar to the previous year, it actually has its own story and collector appeal. Because the 1984 Washington quarter might not get as much attention as 1983, but don't underestimate it. This coin still holds strong value potential, especially in high grades and rare conditions. Let's take a closer look at the 1984 Washington quarter. After the unusual situation in 1982 and 1983, when no official mint sets were released, things started returning to normal in 1984. The U.S. Mint resumed producing mint sets, which means more uncirculated. Coins were preserved compared to the previous 2 years, and that changes everything. Unlike 1983, where high-grade coins are extremely rare, the 1984 quarter is slightly easier to find in better condition. But truly perfect examples are still very difficult to locate. The design remains the same iconic look, George Washington on the front, the eagle on the reverse, strong, detailed, and symbolic. Now let's talk about mintage. Philadelphia minted over 676 million coins. Denver produced more than 546 million coins. And San Francisco once again struck proof coins for collectors. These are very high numbers, which means circulated coins are extremely common. A worn 1984 quarter? Still just 25 cents? But when we move into uncirculated condition, things start to change. An MS-63, MS-65 coin can be worth around $10 to $25. In MS-67 condition, values can jump to $300 to $700. And in MS-67 Plus or higher, these coins can reach $1,000 or more depending on demand. Now let's talk about the hidden side of this coin. Even in a normal production year, mint errors still exist, and these are what collectors love to hunt for. Some 1984 quarters show double die errors, where the text appears slightly doubled, especially in Liberty or the date. There are also die cracks and die breaks, creating raised lines or unusual patterns on the coin's surface. Off-center strikes are another exciting possibility, coins where the design is misaligned. If the date is still visible and the error is significant, these can be worth hundreds. Clipped planchette errors can also appear, where part of the coin is missing due to a cutting issue. And just like all the previous coins, wrong planchette errors. These rare mistakes happen when a quarter is struck on a different type of metal blank, creating a completely unusual coin that can be worth thousands. Now let's not forget the San Francisco proof coins. These coins were specially made for collectors with mirror-like finishes and sharp details. Some feature deep cameo contrast, making them highly desirable. High-grade proofs can range from $30 to several $100s. So while the 1984 Washington quarter may seem like a normal coin after the rarity of 1983, it still holds value, especially for those who know what to look for. Because in coin collecting, even the most common years can hide uncommon treasures. So next time you see a 1984 quarter, don't just spend it, Take a closer look, because the difference between ordinary and valuable is always in the details. Now let's move on to the final coin in today's lineup. And even though this one is more modern compared to the others, it still holds surprising value and collector interest. Let's take a deep dive into the 1990 Washington quarter. By 1990, the United States had fully stabilized its clad coinage system. Coins were being produced efficiently, and quality control had improved compared to earlier decades. Everything seemed more standard, and because of that, most people assume coins from this era have no real value. But that's not entirely true, because even in a modern year like 1990, rarity still exists, especially when it comes to condition and errors. The design remains the same classic Washington quarter style, George Washington's portrait on the front, and the iconic eagle on the reverse, symbolizing strength and national pride. Now let's talk about mintage. Philadelphia minted over 630 million coins, Denver produced more than 927 million coins, and San Francisco struck proof coins for collectors. These are extremely high numbers, which is why circulated 1990 quarters are very common. A normal use coin? Still just 25 cents. But here's where things get interesting. Even though many coins were saved in mint sets, finding a 1990 quarter in truly flawless condition is still very difficult. And in coin collecting, perfection is rare. An MS63 MS65 coin can be worth around $10 to $20. In MS67 condition, values can jump to $200 to $500. And in MS67 Plus or higher, these coins can reach $800 to $1,200 or more depending on demand. Now let's talk about the real hidden treasures. The 1990 quarter is known for several collectible mint errors. Some coins show double die features, slight doubling in the lettering or date, which can increase value. There are also die cracks and die breaks, creating raised lines or unusual patterns on the coin's surface. Off-center strikes are always exciting, coins where the design is shifted. The more dramatic the error, while keeping the date visible, the higher the value. Clipped planchette errors can also be found, giving the coin a unique and noticeable shape. And just like all the previous years, wrong planchette errors. If a 1990 quarter was struck on a different type of metal blank, it can look completely unusual, and these rare coins can be worth thousands. Now let's not forget the San Francisco proof coins. These coins were made with high precision for collectors, featuring mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. Some deep cameo proofs can be worth $30 to several $100 depending on grade. So while the 1990 Washington quarter may seem like just another modern coin, it still holds value for those who pay attention to detail. Because in the world of coin collecting, it's not about how old the coin is. It's about how rare it is in condition and how unique it is in errors. From 1971 all the way to 1990, these Washington quarters may look like ordinary pocket change. But now you know the truth. Each one carries a hidden story, a unique history, and the potential to be worth far more than just 25 cents. Some are rare because of their condition, some because of minting errors, and some simply because very few people ever thought to save them. And that's what makes this journey so exciting. The idea that a valuable coin isn't locked away in a museum. It could be sitting in your wallet, your drawer, or even the next handful of change you receive. So from today onward, don't just spend your coins. Examine them, understand them, and respect their hidden value. Because in the world of coin collecting, one small detail can change everything, and your next quarter might just be the one that turns an ordinary moment into an extraordinary discovery.